Anitasakram was a beautiful village nestled amidst rolling hills and verdant forest. It was renowned for its rich culture and hospitality, fiercely preserving its traditions and beliefs. Here, formal education, healthcare, and modern infrastructure were rejected, compelling villagers to trek miles for these services. The village's identity was steeped in a strong belief in witches and witchcraft. Under the shade of a grand mahogany tree, the village square buzzed with tension. The vibrant leaves whispered in the wind, seemingly echoing the murmurs of the gathered crowd. At the center stood a radiant queen, her presence commanding, and beside her, a formidable priestess draped in ceremonial apparel. On the ground before them, a battered and feeble woman sat, her spirit visibly worn. The priestess, eyes sharp and unyielding, pointed a finger at the old woman, granting her a chance to speak her final words. With an agonizing and defiant voice, the old woman cursed the king's wife, saying, "It is only the young that everybody has been, but not the old. You will live long and grow old, with gray hair, and your own children will accuse you of witchcraft." She then turned to the priestess, and said to her, "I took care of you like my own child. I even abandoned needs of my children just to take care of you. And now, you stand here accusing me of witchcraft. You will not have the privilege to bear a child, that will even accuse you of being a witch." Unperturbed by the woman's words, the priestess ordered her execution. Yanta, the king's wife, for her this act was in support of her friend. She was once a poor orphan who was disregarded by everybody, and deemed unfit to marry a king, till she met Nana Abwer the priestess, who told her the gods had chosen her to be the king's wife. She maneuvered and ensured that she became the king's wife. Nana Abwer the priestess was powerful and renowned. She was born extraordinarily, with feet first. As a child she could foretell the future. As time passed, she was recognized as a potent soothsayer, and a crucial mediator between the gods and the people. The people trusted her. They took her words as a direct instruction from the gods. So, when she told Yanta one day that, "The gods have chosen them to purge the village of witches," she was honored to support a friend, and be part of the divine will. Yanta was known as the king's heart. Whatever she requested from the king was granted with immediate effect. One day after dinner, she pretended to be unhappy. The king, bothered to see her that way, asked what he could do to elevate her mood. She held his hand and made him swear an oath that, whatever she asked he will do. The king, hell-bent on making her happy, took the oath. Then, she requested for the sole power, to rid the village of its witches. The king bounded by an oath, and love yielded to her demand. From that day onwards, she and Nana Abwer have been persecuting old women, suspected of witchcraft. But Nana Abwer had an ulterior motive. For her, it was a vindication for her mother. When growing up, she always saw how her old grandmother insulted and maltreated her mother. She even prevented her from seeing her. All because she was the only woman in the village who seemed unhappy even weeks after giving birth. On her mother's deathbed, she told her to beware of old women. From that day onwards, she has harbored hate for old women. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some felt relieved another witch was purged from their midst, while others feared the priestess was now unstoppable, since the woman, she executed was her own nanny. Standing in the crowd was a little girl named Equia Asantwa, who watched as her young mind grappled with the brutal spectacle. Equia was a very sweet, kind and intelligent girl, who was also curious, and a seeker of understanding. She lived with her grandmother, whom she loved dearly. She would often ask her questions that made her wonder where she heard them from. While she was in the crowd watching, with a lot going through her mind, her grandmother suddenly pulled her from the crowd. Hugging her, she told her not to ever come out at this time again. On their way home, Equia tried to ask questions about what happened, but her grandmother disregarded her questions. Years passed, and Equia is now a teenager. In school she was very bright and disciplined, that earned her admiration from many people, including her class teacher Miss Adair. Even though the years have passed, she could not shake the memory of that day from her head. Witch hunts still plagued the village. She one day resolved to uncover the truth. One fateful day, Equia saw two palace guards dragging an old woman away for interrogation. Quietly, she followed them to a secluded spot, where she witnessed the woman being beaten and caged. Horrified, Equia tried to leave but was caught by a young man named Nana Ajiman, the crown prince. He threatened to call the guards on her. She pleaded with him, explaining her intentions. From that day, they became secret friends, meeting by the riverside to converse. Nana Ajiman, abreast of what goes on in the palace, enlightened Equia about the witchcraft accusation process. First, a family tragedy must occur, followed by divination from the priestess, leading to an arrest, trial, and judgment on the 14th day. After the judgment, the family received 5 pieces of gold. They both registered their displeasure, and questioned why only the old and poor women were accused, by their families, and never the rich or the royals. They also questioned why any old woman, who was sent for divination, was always guilty. One evening, Equia returned from her meeting with Nana Ajiman. She overheard her uncle shouting at her grandmother, and blaming her for how his cocoa farm suddenly caught fire and how her auntie's husband died mysteriously. He angrily walked past Equia without noticing her. Equia quickly rushed inside, and found her grandmother crying. When she saw Equia, she immediately wiped her tears. She brought out an Owari game for them to play. Feigning a smile, but Equia sensed something was deeply wrong. Days later, as Equia was sweeping, and her grandmother was cooking, 2 palace guards arrived, with orders to take her grandmother for witchcraft divination. Despite Equia's resistance, they dragged the old woman away. Her grandmother, with a calm demeanor, assured her that she would be fine. Equia knew she had to do something to save her grandmother. Determined to save her, she confided in Miss Adair about everything going on in their village. Appalled by the information, Miss Adair agreed to help her rescue her grandmother. So, she, Nana Ajiman and Miss Adair met secretly to devise a plan to rescue her. Their only challenge was how to get her grandmother out of the cage without the notice of all the guards around. Her grandmother was kept in a heavily guarded cell, sharing it with another old woman. Despite their dire situation, thoughts of Equia brought a spark to her grandmother's eyes. She would often talk about Equia to her cellmate, who admired the young girl's immense love for her grandmother, and wished she was as lucky as her. She vowed to herself to help her escape. One night, Equia secretly visited her grandmother to tell her of their plans so far. Her cellmate volunteered to help her out of the cage. She instructed her to gather some specific herbs. 3 days later, the old woman concocted a potion, and gave it to Equia's grandmother. She drank it, causing her to collapse and appear lifeless. She shouted for help, and the guards entered. Seeing her lifeless body, they checked her pulse and felt none. The guards, believing she was dead, brought a coffin, placed her in it, to be taken to the evil forest as custom demanded. As the coffin was being carried away by 4 guards, 2 of the guards were summoned for reassignment of duty, and replaced by another 2. Reaching the ends of the village, the guards diverted the coffin towards the neighboring village. They opened the coffin, helping Equia's semi-conscious grandmother out. They helped her climb into a waiting cocoa truck. Holding a small bundle of clothes was Equia, who also climbed the truck. Miss Adair handed to Equia a paper with information about the NGO that would shelter them. Nana Ajiman then removed a bead bracelet from his wrist, giving it to Equia as a promise that the tradition would change when he becomes king. He also vowed to do anything in his power to help old women accused of witchcraft escape. As the truck set off, they bid each other farewell, hoping for a brighter future.